The Woronora Reservoir, located in Sydney South, is the main drinking water supply for the communities in the surrounding suburbs of Heathcote and parts of the Sutherland Shire. Classified as a special area by Water New South Wales, the reservoir is strictly closed off to the public to ensure the preservation of freshwater streams and threatened species. However, deep beneath the surface, the protected area is also home to a number of controversial longwall coal mines. Mining activity within the Woronora Reservoir has long been a point of contention since it was initially approved in 2009. Since then, experts and environmental groups have been pointing to evidence of discoloration and water loss in the areas of the eastern Tributary and Waratah Rivulet as a result of longwall mining. Now, Peabody Energy's planned 3 longwall mines set to run directly underneath the reservoir has sparked a new wave of concern. Longwall Mines 305 to 307 were approved by the New South Wales Department of Planning without a parliamentary debate in March of this year, with backing from an independent expert panel. It's the first time coal mining will be allowed under a Sydney water catchment in more than 20 years. The Metropolitan Colliery, located in the small town of Helensburgh, is Australia's oldest continually operating coal mine. Also referred to as the Helensburgh Mine, it's the rock upon which the town was built.
My name is Alan House. I was president of the Helensburgh Historical Society for 11 years, up to a couple of years ago. And I wrote a book on Metropolitan Colliery and its history in the town of Helensburgh. Moved here in 1973, still considered a blow-in because I wasn't born here. That is Helensburgh. My children are all locals because they were born here.
Alan has lived in Helensburgh for more than 45 years and has also written about the significance of coal mining to the town's rich history.
The story of Helensburgh is prefaced on 3 main events. One was the discovery of coal, which is perhaps the most important, but that wouldn't have happened if it hadn't have been for the establishment of the Royal National Park and for the decision by the state government at the time to put a railway line between Sydney and Wollongong. And so a group of entrepreneurs got together and decided, well, we'll dig for coal at Helensburgh. And that was in 1883 that they made that decision.
Helensburgh was once home to more than 500 coal miners and their families. But over the years, the dynamic of the town has been gradually shifting, with a growing influx of younger people who predominantly work outside the town, now making Helensburgh their home.
What's happening now is the town is changing in character. A lot of the old houses are being knocked down and replaced by townhouses and duplexes. The mine has decreased in its workforce from a high of around 800 back in the 20s and 30s down to about 150 or so now. So its impact on the town has just got lower and lower in terms of workforce.
Would you still say that Helensburgh is a mining town?
Helensburgh has a mine, but I wouldn't describe it as a mining town.
Just because Helensburgh is no longer considered the mining town it once was, doesn't mean that the mine has lost its importance to many of the locals.
When we had the protesters here a decade ago about coal mining, closing down coal, shut the gate protesters, quite a lot of locals really got upset with them because they were just saying ridiculous things. Our mine seems to be lumped in with mines that do not perform very well. The Dendrobium mine, for example, they have problems there that we just don't have here.
More than a decade later, there still seems to be a divide between people within Helensburgh that support the mine and people outside the town who don't.
Whether it's for coal mining or anything, they've got enough coal down the south coast. So why disrupt that system there?
Well, I don't know if that's too good for us, in our environment and stuff. So I don't know. I don't think that's good.
It's important to look at the details and make sure that people are, checking things out thoroughly. The first impression is that that's probably not a good plan, though.
But over the years, the issue of longwall mining in the Woronora Reservoir has started to gain a lot more attention. Just last year, a small movement started by a concerned local on the shores of Bundeena would force a debate in the New South Wales Parliament.
Catherine Reynolds, currently I'm the Executive Officer of Sutherland Shire Environment Centre.
Catherine first found out about the issue after attending a public forum held by the Environment Centre early last year.
But I'd never heard about it before, and I was shocked and I was horrified when I saw the pictures of the damage. I was still getting my head around the extent of the mining. My immediate focus was on Woronora because that's where I get my own drinking water from. Then I checked with the Bundeena community here how they felt about the mining, and they were as horrified as I was. When they saw the pictures, people were horrified, and I didn't know what to do. It seemed impossible to just let it go.
Outraged by what she saw, Catherine started a petition in her own local community, calling for the cancellation of future coal extraction plans within the Woronora Reservoir.
I put up a Facebook post which went viral, and it just took off from there. We had a huge number of volunteers support the petition. We went and had copies of the petition in shops all around the Shire. We had to go and monitor that. We went to a number of fairs, fetes, had stalls there with volunteers. Some of these people were quite elderly, but they were thinking about their children and their grandchildren, and they thought that this was wrong as well. The special area catchments are closed off. The public is not allowed in there. The only people who are allowed in these water catchments on a regular basis work for the mining company. If we go in there, fines can be up to $44,000. Getting permission to go in there to investigate the damage is time consuming and difficult. It's hard to get permission to go in there. As a result, all the pictures we had are spread out over a number of years.
Images of fractured sandstone and pools of discoloured water from the eastern Tributary and Waratah Rivulet, which feeds water into the dam, date all the way back to 2006. Photos from the National Parks Association show severely cracked stream beds, highly contaminated water, and pools which have dried up completely, as a result of something called subsidence. Subsidence is the gradual sinking or deformation of the ground surface, which can be caused by underground longwall mining. As the coal seam is stripped away by a large shearer, the roof of that section, which has just been cut, caves in behind them, causing a pressure differential. That pressure is only equalised when the landscape above eventually warps and cracks. But due to restricted access into the special area, there's been inconsistent documentation of the impacts of longwall mining in the reservoir over the last 15 years. However, more recently, drone footage published by the Sydney Morning Herald in July of 2019, painting a gloomy picture of the water catchment, helped capture the public's attention. The Sutherland Shire Environment Centre's petition would eventually reach the 10,000 handwritten signatures required for it to be debated in the New South Wales Parliament. The petition was originally set to be debated in March of this year, but was pushed back to June due to reduced sitting days. On March 16, before the debate could occur, Catherine and the Environment Centre were dealt a surprising blow, as the Department of Planning gave Peabody the go-ahead on Longwall Mines 305 to 307.
That was shocking. I suspected in the weeks leading up to the debate that something like that may have been likely to occur. I did not get the impression that the local MP Lee Evans supported us. He seemed very complacent about the whole thing, and I suspect, because of his complacency, I suspected that they would do something like that, and we got very little support from Labor either.
In a statement from the member for Heathcote, Lee Evans said that, at this stage of the process, it does not involve a parliamentary vote.
We were doing that work with the hope that the democratic process would give it due credence. We knew that we needed 10,000 signatures, and that was a lot. But we were hoping that this would cause our local state MPs to sit up and listen to our concerns and try and address them. In hindsight, we were quite naive.
Consideration of the petition signed by 10,000 or more persons listed on the business paper, which is regarding Woronora Dam area mining, lodged by the member for Heathcote.
The Metropolitan Mine's the oldest mine in Australia. It's 160 years old, and their mining practices are second to none.
And ask ourselves whether or not that is legitimate and robust, transparent and specialised enough. And in this instance, my colleagues and I on this side decided that we thought it was.
But that is why it is so important to listen to the experts and maintain integrity in the planning process, and at also at the same time listen to the people that have put their names to a petition, as is their right, as we should acknowledge the work of the member for Heathcote, Lee Evans, in being a great local member.
We're faced now with a situation where our MPs have refused to represent us. Our local state MPs here, Mark Speakman, the New South Wales Attorney General and member for Cronulla, he didn't even bother to stay in the chamber for the debate, let alone speak. The same thing with the member for Miranda, Eleni Petanos, didn't even bother to stay in the chamber.
Both the member for Cronulla and the member for Miranda were contacted and refused to comment.
Lee Evans, a member for Heathcote, the seat where the mining is taking place, he spoke for 3 minutes.
The job creation or the job decimation, if this mine closed, would be something that I think my colleagues down the Wollongong area would agree. We're looking at about 3,500 people in BlueScope, which, if this mine closed, it would definitely...
best steel in the world.
Indeed, and it's the best coal that goes into that steel mill.
The Metropolitan Mine is a significant part of the Illawarra's local economy, directly employing around 300 people, as well as supplying metallurgical coal to the Port Kembla Steelworks, which employs more than 3,000 people. However, like many companies across the globe, Peabody Energy has not been immune to the severe economic impacts of the coronavirus.
The major effect is COVID-19 shipping coal out at the moment, so China's not buying it, and China and India are our two biggest importers of our coal, so export for us, and they're not doing much at the moment.
Andy Davey is the District Secretary of Southwestern CFMEU, the trade union which looks after almost 100% of the Metropolitan Mines employees.
There was 130 lost in the redundancies, being made redundant. 40 of them was took the VR and was at the stage of their life where they believed they will never be back in the industry, and they've turned their back and walked away on it. And then we went for a forced redundancy side of it. My initial reaction, it dug deep because of my heritage up there for the 20 years to 10 years as Lodge President and all the great mates that I'd made up there. So it was a hard process for me to work through from this job, sitting in the chair. And I've only been in this chair for just over 12 months now. So it was hard. We're still running 23 unfair dismissal cases at this stage against Peabody because we believe that there could have been other ways they went about the redundancy side of it and how they did it.
Peabody reduced approximately 33% of its workforce at the Metropolitan mine, the equivalent of the coal it sells overseas. All coal currently being mined is being used to fulfill its contract with the Port Kembla Steelworks. A Peabody spokesperson said that the high-quality coal produced at Metropolitan is a critical ingredient for making the steel that builds homes, schools, hospitals and bridges, Australia and around the globe. There is currently no viable alternative to the use of coal in primary steel production. As someone who has been in the business of coal mining for more than 20 years now, Andy is convinced that Peabody's extraction plan won't lead to subsidence.
Helensburgh itself is a small mine compared to your bigger mines, your South 32s, Dendrobians and Appin West. The longwalls are a lot smaller, so therefore the abutment zone, which is the throwback as to how it gets for the surface, is a lot smaller. The abutment zone at Helensburgh doesn't even reach the water table end, so it's not fracturing anything. There's nothing there.
Peabody will be narrowing the width of its new longwall panels from 163 metres to 138, with mining to be carried out approximately 450 metres below the surface.
As you come down, we've emptied out our boardroom at the moment, but you'll see a couple of different sites. Here's the old skips that you'd pick and mine, load in. The horses, you click them together, and the horses were that smart that if they clicked any more than 7, the horses wouldn't move.
Over the last couple of years, Andy has become concerned with what he describes as a growing divide between local communities and the coal industry, which he believes is being driven by a lack of understanding.
In my position, I believe that there's still a lot of people that don't understand the true side of it, coal mining. There's an unforeseen expectation that when we fracture the water and the water disappears, it ends up in the mine. Well, that's not the case. And Peabody spend millions of dollars a year proving that it still gets from point A to point B out in the catchment area. And obviously from a coal mining perspective, we believe we are done by, and from the community side they believe they're hard done by. I've always said that we can work together to understand and move forward and improve all aspects of it, whether it be catchment areas, water table lands, the whole kit and caboodle.
During the debate, the proposal received unanimous support from both sides of the bench. The only party which didn't support the plans were not given time to speak.
I understand the Greens were going to argue against the mine. They were blocked from speaking. They were not given leave to speak. The allotted speaking spots were taken up by National, Liberal and Labor MPs.
Sometimes you can't go back once water is polluted, that it's important that our water is kept as healthy and as clean as possible. That's why we have things such as protected areas. Sydney Water is contained within a protected area catchment so that the water source can be healthy for the population to drink.
Greens MP and spokesperson for water and the environment has been running a campaign against longwall coal mining in Sydney's water catchment and believes the Greens were intentionally not given a voice in the debate.
To not allow political parties that have such an interest in an issue to debate particularly when it comes to a petition by the community to debate that issue, is just, it's kind of childish politics, if you like. It's schoolyard politics. And the community puts so much faith in petitions because this place, Parliament, doesn't have really as many opportunities for people to be able to participate in choosing what the politicians debate here. But in fact, the debate itself, I think, was really rude to the extraordinary efforts that the community has gone to. And I think they just treated the whole thing with, disregard. And if I was the community group and organisers who tried to get those signatures on that petition, I would have been disappointed with the effort.
In a statement from the Director of Resource Assessments, Energy, Industry and Compliance from the Department of Planning, Stephen O'Donoghue said that the department asked the New South Wales Chief Scientist and Engineers Independent Expert Panel for Mining in the Catchment for advice, and adopted all the recommendations of the panel before its approval of the extraction plan. The Independent Expert Panel for Mining in the Catchment was established in February 2018 and tasked with providing advice on the impact of mining activities in the Greater Sydney Water Catchment Special Areas. In the Independent Expert Panel's final report published in October 2019, it concluded that,
and I quote, losses of water from the Woronora Special Area
due to mining impact associated with the Metropolitan Mine
are negligible.
Are negligible.
Very dodgy. It didn't actually look at stopping mining in the catchments. That wasn't part of the terms of reference. So what the Independent Expert Panel did was point out very clearly the dangers to cover themselves, yet at the same time, they, the original terms of reference made it a foregone question. They were going to say, yes, continue mining in the catchment with increased monitoring. But at the same time, they noted that there was the danger of water from the old mine tunnels that had been filled in, needing treatment in perpetuity. They noted the danger of swamps being irrevocably damaged.
the panel's final report also concluded that there is almost no possibility of remediating fractures beneath swamps caused by mining, and therefore recommended that offsets be paid as compensation for any negative environmental impacts on swamps, compelling a number of experts to question the science behind the independent expert panel's report.
So these swamps form the headwaters, which then go into very small sandstone tributaries, which then flow down into bigger creeks, which then flow into rivers, which then flow into the dams. So by disrupting your headwaters, you're disrupting the flow of what is essentially designed to be a closed system, whereby even during periods of non-rainfall, those sponges are still releasing water into the headwater streams and into the rivers. So even during extended droughts, you would have still had water flowing in those creeks.
Catherine Cunningham is an independent researcher who conducted a study on the effect of subsidence from longwall coal mining on ecology in the Woronora Reservoir in 2015. In her research, she found a clear difference between the water quality in mined and non-mined areas of the reservoir.
For what were fairly stable water quality and ecological environments and stable habitats supporting populations and water chemistry, once underground longwall mining was active in an area and was starting to impact the surface streams, you would see shifts in the water chemistry and you would see shifts in the macroinvertebrate communities. And it's showing you that the system is changing, and it's showing you that the animals are then having to adapt and respond to those changes.
Despite Catherine's research showing a decline in water quality from the mined areas, she wasn't surprised that the independent expert panel did not come to the same conclusion.
And because of the way they were monitoring, they were continually able to say, as you can see, there has been no net impact, but they were using the wrong water quality monitoring framework and the wrong ecological indicators. And of course, they could keep getting away with saying no impact, no impact. So if government are continuing with that no impact rhetoric, it's coming from an unfounded base based on incorrect monitoring.
The IPCC's final report states that although surface fracturing elevates metal loads in watercourses, there is no evidence that mining in the special area is currently compromising the ability of Water New South Wales to meet raw water supply agreement standards. The importance of maintaining a constant flow of water throughout the stream also goes beyond meeting drinking supply demands.
When you get a creek drying, you also have drying of the associated riparian vegetation. So where you're going to get clear drying or draining of moisture in soils where you shouldn't, you're going to create more fire hazard. Where you create more fire hazard, you're going to get hotter fires in drier periods going through those areas than naturally they would have ever experienced before.
Let me make the government's position very clear right from the start. We recognise the concerns held by many members of the community who have signed this petition. We are just as concerned about ensuring safety and integrity of Sydney's water supply, and we will continue to closely monitor all environmental impacts on mines in the catchment area.
One of the MPs who spoke in favour of the mine was Wollondilly member Nathaniel Smith, whose own local community has come to learn about the consequences of coal mining underwater streams. Redbank Creek, located in the suburbs of Picton and Thelmere, is a water stream which flows into the Nepean River. It's also become a prominent case study on what can happen when longwall mining occurs directly underneath a creek bed.
This was the worst I'd ever seen. The creek bed, the rocks on the bottom of the creek bed had shattered almost like an earthquake, and there was different levels of what should just be a rocky creek bed, of course, an uneven surface, probably with some water in it, actually, I heard, despite the drought. That was, like you see in highways after an earthquake, literally jagged rocks that had cracked and broken.
Despite unusually low water levels after a heavy period of rainfall, this particular section of Redbank Creek seems to show no signs of subsidence. Water flows down a relatively flat bed of rock into larger pools of water. But around 600 metres further upstream, it's a completely different story.
Redbank. It was bizarre. It was absolutely bizarre. He said, and he was in his 70-ish, he said in living memory, that is him and other older people living in the area, they'd never known Redbank Creek to stop flowing.
Dr. Ian Wright from Western Sydney University is one of Australia's leading water scientists and has been investigating water pollution caused by subsidence in Redbank Creek for more than 5 years.
You know, we went to this point, we found cracks, fresh cracks in the sandstone channel, and we came across where at a series of points, groundwater was actually seeping out.
Dr. Wright's study found that longwall mining activity underneath the creek has caused a complex series of changes, which may never be reversed.
Full of metals at unnatural, often toxic levels, lots of salt, almost no oxygen. I hadn't ever seen something like it before. And if you look for data on this in the scientific literature, you just don't find anything. You just change waterways and the physical flow in so many different unpredictable ways. And the creek will never ever be the same again, in my opinion.
Since publishing his findings, the New South Wales government has ordered GFG Alliance's Tarmore mine to repair the damages it has caused to Redbank Creek. Dr. Ian Wright believes that it's an almost impossible fix.
And we captured attempts of, contractors trying to glue up the cracks of Redbank Creek. And just think of Humpty Dumpty being glued up. It just doesn't work. I think you could come back to Redbank in a century and it still won't be a normal creek.
The member for Wollondilly has so far not responded to a request for an interview. Similar to Peabody's planned longwall mines 305 to 307, the mining underneath Redbank Creek was occurring approximately 450 metres below the surface. Dr. Wright believes the restricted access into the Woronora Reservoir for independent researchers is what allows the state government to get away with approving more longwall mines.
I just don't think it's ethical that in the middle of our protected water catchments that we don't have a full independent assessment of those sort of impacts. To me, the government isn't being open and transparent about the impacts and how they're going to, correct those impacts if they happen. I don't think they can solve them. So I don't think we should be doing this until we know a whole lot more about what the long-term impacts are going to be.
Months after the debate, it has still left many unanswered questions for locals like Catherine Reynolds.
Again, it's all so diffuse. We don't know what is negligible. What is the extent of the water loss? We don't know. It's in Peabody's interest to not have that work done, not have that research done. The mining continues. But what can we do? All avenues to address this through the proper political processes, the parliamentary democratic processes, have now been closed off.
The historic decision to allow coal mining under a Sydney water catchment for the first time in 20 years has many people speculating about the future of longwall coal mining and Sydney's drinking water.
They could be using Woronora as a bit of an experimental. Let's sacrifice this reservoir to see just what happens before we would then go and improve or extend on those approvals into these other reservoirs.
It is a difficult one. We obviously need metallurgical coal for making steel at the moment. I don't know of any technology that is yet available that can do it without.
I say we can have a healthy economy. We can find our coal, potentially metallurgical coal, from somewhere else. There's other ways also, hopefully, that are being developed to make steel without needing to burn coal. There's all of that. But we can't find another water source. There is no other alternative to clean water for us.
And we believe that for each tonne of coal, for a tonne of steel, we can make the turbines, we can make the solar panels, we can do everything here in Wollongong, which will keep a lot of people employed.
Renewables are the way, and now renewables, wind, hydro, and solar, that is now more economic. Hydrogen driven by renewables. I reckon in a way we're watching a steep decline to a 19th century industry. We know the consequences of it now, and the sooner that we transition away, the better. And I reckon that's what's going to happen.